What is going on, guys? My name is Rob Wynn from Valteri.com, and today I want to be showing you how you can use Voiceflow to create an automated customer service agent for your business, whether you're a business owner, whether you're an agency owner like me and you're creating this for someone else, or if you just want to get the lay of the land with Voiceflow and figure out what's going on. This video is going to be for you. Let's get right into it. All right, so here we are on the Voiceflow dashboard. Now, before we get fully into creating the chatbot, I quickly wanted to go over the difference between using Voiceflow to create your agents and using something like Chatbase, because I know when I first got into it, I was a little confused on what the difference was between those two. Basically, with Chatbase, it has the ability where you can upload a knowledge source or a knowledge base, and you can create very easily a question and answer chatbot, just strictly simple question and answering. It's great for that and it's very simple and easy to use, but it can't do much more than that. It can't really perform actions, it can't integrate with outside sources, update databases, retrieve order information, make API calls, all that more complicated stuff. That's what you'll want to use a service like Voiceflow for. And there are others like BotPress. This tutorial is going to be focused on Voiceflow. It's the one I've used, and I found it very easy to use, intuitive, and beginner friendly. So with that quick note out of the way, we will proceed with the creation of the agent here. This is the dashboard, like I said. In order to get to this screen, you'll obviously want to sign up, create an account, do all that. There is no charge for using Voiceflow. They do have a free plan. You don't even need to put in a credit card. You get 2 agents with that plan for free and up to 100,000 tokens per month. So highly recommended if you just want to try it out. There is an affiliate link in the description if you feel like doing that. If not, no worries at all. But I'll wait for you to get it set up and get to the screen, and then we will proceed by clicking the New Agent button in the top right to start our agent. We'll go ahead and click that there. Go ahead and fill out these fields here with the appropriate things. We'll just do a chatbot, although there is the option for voice chat. We'll hit continue. It's going to ask for what authorized users we want. We'll just leave that the way it's set right now. Then we'll hit create agent to bring us to the canvas for our new agent. So here we are on the default canvas. It sort of gives you a basic template for an agent. I do actually encourage you to play around with this for a little bit just to see how it works. Like I said, Voiceflow is pretty intuitive and beginner friendly. So you can learn a lot just by playing around with the stuff, seeing how the flows work, seeing how the different boxes and actions work, and maybe experimenting and try adding a few things yourself. So I do encourage you to pause the video and just play around with this. For now, we will proceed. You can select all items by clicking Shift and then dragging your cursor. It'll select everything, and then we'll just go ahead and hit delete to delete everything to start with a fresh canvas. So as you can see now, we have the simple start trigger. This is going to be the start of our flow. Anytime an interaction or a chat starts with our agent, this is where it's going to start from. And in order to add things to this flow, you can click this little button here and drag like this. Or you can go over here and you can come to this menu and you can click and drag the appropriate things as well. We're going to start with the basic message block. This is the default This is the default block if you just want to have your agent say something to the user. You can click within it and then enter your agent message here. So we're just going to have something really basic, a greeting welcoming the user to our site, something like that. We'll do hello, welcome to our website. That sounds solid. And then you can actually stack multiple things within a block. You can see you could put it above, below, like that. We'll put this one below, and it'll just be a what can I help you with message to get the conversation going. We'll want to link up our start trigger with this block. So when we click start, it goes to this. And now we're actually going to run it and see what happens. And you can see we've got our 2 separate messages there. If I had just put all the text into one block, it would have just been one line of code, but you can break it up into multiple messages if you think that looks better for your use case. And then it just ends. You can see session ended because there's nothing else going on here We haven't prompted the user to input anything or anything like that. Now, a quick note on testing. I just want to say you should be testing your agents early and often. Test them as much as possible to make sure that they are doing exactly what you want them to. That's very important so that you don't go through a whole bunch of steps only to find out when you test it at the end that it's not working the way you want to. So be sure to test often. You do have to keep an eye on your token usage sometimes because testing does use tokens, but there's ways you can manage that so it doesn't use as many tokens when you're testing. And you can still make sure that it's doing exactly what you want. So just a quick note on that. So now in order to actually listen for a response from the user, that's where this listen step comes in over here. It means just listen, wait and listen for the user to say something, basically. And you got three options. You got buttons, choice, and capture. Buttons and choice are basically the same thing. They both allow the user to free flow, type things in just in plain English how they want. It's just with buttons, you also give some visual, literal visual buttons that the user can click on, in addition to them having the ability to type something out. So those two are very similar. And then capture just means whatever the user replies, we're going to capture that and save it to a variable. That's what that means. So in this case, we're going to simply choose choice and just let the user say whatever they want. We're going to click and drag it here. And by the way, just so you're aware, Voiceflow is frequently doing updates. So if you're watching this video in the future and things aren't named exactly the way that they are here or the layout's a little different, don't freak out. It was the same way for me when I was watching the tutorials for me to learn. Just it might take a minute to figure out the new thing, but it's usually very similar. And like I said, pretty easy to understand. So now we've got our capture block here, and you can see it says listening for an intent. So what does an intent mean? It means basically what it says. It's what is the user intending to do, or what are they trying to do? Now, you actually as the Voiceflow creator have to set this up and tell Voiceflow what the possible intents are. There's not just an infinite number of them. You have to specify exactly which intents you want it to listen for. So if we run this test again, we've got the two messages, and then it doesn't end. It does wait for us to type something, but if we say something like, I need tech support, and send that message in, we get this, sorry, I didn't get that message. And that's because we haven't configured any intents yet for it to actually listen to. So there, it can't really define what the user says and fit it into a specific category. It can only respond with this message no matter what we said. So if we said billing even, we get the exact same response. So to solve that, what we want to do is start creating some intents. And to do that, you go ahead and click on this. You'll go over here to select an intent for one path. There's some default intents here, just yes and no. We'll create a new intent. We'll call it tech support, like I just typed in. You can type a description as well if you want. And then these utterances, these are where you specify things that the user might say that are you want to direct to this intent. So obviously what I just said, I need tech support. That would be one. You can hit enter. I need help with my software would be another. And then what you can do is use this AI generation tool by clicking here. You can generate some sample phrases. And it'll come up with a bunch for you that are similar to the first one that you put in here. It's always going to go by the very first one. Now, you do want to double check these because sometimes they're not exactly what you want. So don't just click that and call it a day because the green confidence bar is full. You do want to quickly go over that to make sure your agent is routing them appropriately. So if you don't want any, you can just click this negative sign and it'll take them away. Also, what I recommend doing here is if you have, like a user might say multiple different things and you all wanted to route it to the same intent, because the AI here can only generate based on that first one that you said, you can just use ChatGPT or another large language model for help generating a bunch of utterances that the user might say. Can also do it where, you know, y'all know people don't always say things exactly the way you would say them. People misspell words. There's people who, your native language isn't their native language, so they type things with incorrect grammar, stuff like that. You can also instruct ChatGPT to give you some of those utterances. You'll want to have a good variety, a good coverage of the different things people could say to make sure you're getting everything to the right intent. And this is another thing that takes a lot of testing to make sure you're getting it right. So again, with these, you want to make sure through tests that you want to try a variety of different ways of saying the same thing to make sure it is correctly routing to the intent. But for now, we're just going to go with these. We'll assume all these look good for our purposes in this tutorial. They do. We'll click Create Intent. And now we can see our tech support intent filled or populates that path over there. And now when we run our test, let's take a look. Oh, actually, first we need to go ahead and train our model. That's when you see this little red dot, it means the agent needs training. This usually happens when you modify your intents or potentially the knowledge base. It says it may take a few minutes, but I've never seen it take more than like 20 seconds, so it's really not too bad. See, it's already trained. Now we can proceed. We'll say, I need tech support. I need tech support just like before. Now this time the session does end and it says no intent matched, but actually you can see here now we do have tech support at 100%, and that tech support is an indicator of the intent that we set up. It is matching to the tech support intent with 100% confidence. And a way to get this figure up if you don't see it on your screen is to click this little settings button for the test and go into debug mode and then show the intent confidence score as well. I think this is clicked off by default. Yeah, you can see it'll show up when we click it there. So I highly recommend both of those just for troubleshooting purposes. And also, I want to show you this tab real quick over on the left. If you click this little bar, it'll pop out with all the variables and their current values as you go through the test. That can be very helpful as well for debugging. So now that our agent in this step is listening for intents and we have the tech support set up, or in tech support intent set up, what do we want to have happen when we detect that intent? That's where we can click the little circle and drag and then create a path from here. Now for this tutorial, we're just going to make it real simple and just create a message that says it's going to trigger the tech support process. But obviously for when you're creating your own bots, you can build this out however you want. You can, if you get into the more complicated stuff, which we will a little bit later, I'll show you how to use make.com integrations to integrate with the agent here. You can create tickets, use Zendesk, that sort of thing. But for now, we'll just leave it at this so we can move on with the tutorial. Now, in order to create additional intents, because obviously there's other things besides tech support that a user might want to do, you can go ahead and click Add Choice here by going back to the Listen button. Click Add Choice, and you'll have the option to add another intent. And you can do this pretty much as many times as you want. We'll go ahead and create a new intent here. We'll do billing. Do the same thing where we create some sample utterances and use the generate function to populate a bunch. And we'll go ahead and create that intent as well. So we have two intents up and running. I'll create a simple path for this one just for completeness. And a quick note on intent confidence score. We saw before when we did the test run, it was 100% confident that what we said would go to the tech support intent, but often it's not that. It might only be 60% sure, 80% sure. You can adjust that setting so that I think the confidence threshold by default is 60%. If it's 60% for sure, 60% sure you want to go to a particular intent, it will route it that way, but you can adjust that. 50, you want it to be more confident, 80, 90, something like that. Just a quick note on the confidence threshold. So one other quick thing with intents I wanted to show you is the trigger function. And if you right click on the canvas and you click this button called Add Trigger, you'll get a button like this, similar to the Start button, but for this one, it's going to connect to an intent. So if you click on it and then you click the little plus sign by triggers, you'll see a list of intents here and you can click one. And what this means is if it detects an intent, it will route to this. So this can be an alternative to adding the path directly from here, like we could say instead of that, we could have it go to this action and go to intent, and then we can select this intent under home and then tech support, and it'll route here. Now, one thing about these triggers you have to keep in mind is that they will listen globally in the conversation. So, in another part of the conversation, like way down in your workflow, if it detects that the user wants tech support, this will listen for it and it will pick it up and it'll route and it'll start over here. So, that's something to keep in mind when using these triggers. But I'll go ahead and delete this. I just wanted to point it out because that is another option you can use in your workflows. All right, now what if the user inputs something that is not tech support or billing? What if they have a question about our services or what our prices are or anything about our business? That's where the knowledge base and the actual AI portion of the flow can come in. So we'll go ahead and click on this choice box. And then for no match, basically saying it doesn't match any of the intents, what do we want to have happen? We'll click on that and then we'll click path here to allow us the option to create a different path for when there is no match. And then we can click the little circle, drag it, and now we have what's going to happen when they ask. Let's just say what happens when they ask what services we offer. That's where we'll click and drag, and we want the AI to answer that question. So we click this. There's two options under AI. There's Set AI and Response AI. Response AI is where you are responding to the user's question, which we'll use here. Set AI is where you're going to use AI to set variables, similar to the listen step where we capture the user's response and set it to a variable. Set AI, we're going to be taking the AI response and saving that to variables. But for now, we actually just want to directly respond to the user's question, so we'll click Response AI. And then we have two options for our data source when we do that. We have just the basic AI model and everything it was trained on, all the information on the web, that sort of thing. And then we have knowledge base, which is the custom information specific to your business. It's basically what it sounds like. It's a base of knowledge, maybe some frequently asked questions, some information about your business, anything you would want to possibly convey to a user using this agent here, you could put into your knowledge base. And the way that it works is if you're familiar with the concept of a vector database, that's essentially what it is. It'll break down all the knowledge into vectors and score it. And then based on the user's query, the model will retrieve the relevant parts of the knowledge base to answer the user's question. So it's not like it's sending the entire knowledge base plus the user's question to the large language model and getting the response. In order to be practical and save tokens, it can figure out what are the most relevant sections or chunks, as they're called, of the knowledge base, extract those, then send those chunks plus the user's question as the prompt to the large language model. Results in a much smaller prompt, much more token saved, but also very accurate answers because it has the chunks, it has the information that it needs to answer the user's question. So if we go ahead and select the knowledge base option, we'll see there's two fields that we can potentially enter. The first one is question. That's the query that we're going to send to the knowledge base so that it retrieves the appropriate information from the knowledge base. Now, for our uses here in this one, what we want to send is a variable, we don't just want to free type a question. We actually want to say what the user asked. So that variable is kept in Voiceflow by default under the variable last utterance. You can access the list of variables by doing the curly brackets opening, and then it will give you all the list of the variables that are available. Last utterance is going to be the one that the user's query, their most recent input into the chat system, that's what it's saved under. And since this one, there's only one message that could have possibly sent to trigger this, it's going to be the last one. So that's why we choose last utterance for the question there. Instructions for the response, we're just going to leave blank. We don't need any special formatting right now for our knowledge base retrieval. We just need it We just need the information basically, so we can leave that one blank. You'll also see the option here to override prompt settings, which you can click on. If you toggle that on, it'll give you various options. You can change the model if you'd like to ChatGPT. You can adjust the temperature up or down. We'll keep that low. The tokens that it retrieves from the model, depending on your use case, usually around 200 is probably good. You don't want it to be too wild on the temperature. If you're unsure of what all that means, go ahead and watch my previous video on the large language model prompting fundamentals, so you can learn about that. The system message you can, or we will leave blank at the moment, but you can enter a system message if you'd like. And then you can also preview something by entering a value for like a sample user question. We can't do anything because we haven't input a knowledge base yet. We can't preview that, but that's how you would do that if you wanted to. So the next thing we'll go over is how to actually construct this knowledge base for your business. You probably have things available depending on your situation already, some information about the business. You can also link specific URLs or web pages or even a sitemap, and it will just read the information directly from the site. In this case, I created a specific document for the knowledge base that had basically like a list of FAQs. And to build it out, I used ChatGPT. Here's the prompt I gave it, and it gave me its sample response. And then I just slowly built out using a similar prompt as this, the different sections of the knowledge base. And you can use this not only to build out your knowledge base, but also for constructing your intents. You're constructing questions that users might ask. Just say, hey, ChatGPT, can you give me a list of sample questions that visitors might ask this agent that I'm building? My business is this, and it'll give you a big long list of potential questions. You can modify those. You can tell it to be more creative. You can use it for all sorts of generation like this. Now, obviously, you'll want to go through its result and modify it, but this is how you get the base. This is how you get the format, the base information, and then you can go in and adjust it based on your particular business. Now, once you actually have the knowledge base built out, and that can take some time, obviously, but once you have it built out and it's pretty accurate, in order to load it into your model so that it can actually be used by the agent, you'll want to go back to the dashboard for your agent, this screen right here. You have a sub list of different options over here. The one we'll want to go to is knowledge. Right now, there's no data sources, so we'll go ahead and click Add a Data Source. I'm going to upload a file. You can do various things. And we're going to upload our Valtieri knowledge base, import it, and it's loaded. Pretty easy. Now to get back to our workflow, we'll go ahead and click Workflows. Then you double click this line. That's the easiest way. It'll take you right back in there. And now we have our knowledge base all loaded in. And now when we start the chat, we'll get this message. We'll say, what types of services do you offer? It's not tech support or billing, so it should route to the knowledge base. And you get the answer because it knows it's not tech support, it's not billing, so it sends that query to the knowledge base instead. The knowledge base is able to find that information, or excuse me, the model is able to find that information in the knowledge base, and so we get an answer here. Now, just to show you what happens if you type something completely random, nothing happens here because that question is not found in the knowledge base, and also we haven't established a path for not found. When it's not found in the knowledge base, there's nothing there. So it just ends the chat. It doesn't answer the user's question because it can't, and there's no additional path for what to do when that happens. So it just ends. And by the way, since we have them up here, this information over here is your token usage. It shows you how many tokens were sent to the model, and then the adjusted amount of tokens that were used against your Voiceflow account quota based on the model that you're using, because ChatGPT 3.5 is a cheaper model. It's only 0.6 of the amount of the standard amount of tokens that it used. One thing I wanted to mention real quick, I'm back in the knowledge base screen. You might have seen it on your own, but I wanted to go over it real quick. If you click the settings button here, This is going to open up the settings for the knowledge base specifically. You can change the model, you can change the temperature, the max tokens, you can change the chunk limit. Usually, like 2 to 3 is going to be best for simple FAQ type situations where your knowledge base should be able to retrieve most of the information. I like to change this system message here because frankly it doesn't make sense to me. It says your responses should be fewer than a couple of sentences, which is sort of paradoxical. I like to change it to just your responses should be a couple of sentences, something like that. You can adjust it for your use case, obviously, but I like to modify that. So what if our model can't answer our question from the knowledge base, like when we ask it a completely random question, or if a user just asks it a question that's relevant, but just for whatever reason not included in our knowledge base? That's where this not found path comes in. You can just create this. You can do whatever you want. We're just going to create a simple message saying, hey, sorry, we couldn't find the message, but go ahead and email me directly for an answer to the question. I'd be happy to help you out. So I'm going to put that in real quick. You can do whatever you want, obviously, in your chatbots, but that's how you would handle something like that. So now, no matter what, whether we were able to answer the user's question or not, we're going to create a new message here and just say, ask if there's anything else we can help the user with today. And you can see underneath there's this variance line. This gives you the option to add variance manually, so it's not saying the same thing every time, or you can do it again with AI, similar to before when we created utterances with generative AI. This is a similar thing, and then you can choose which things you want to accept. We'll just do these three. So now it'll randomly pick one when we get to this step. We're going to go ahead and connect both when we're able to answer the user's question with the knowledge base, and also when we are not, we're going to want to go up to this block as well. So both one are going to ask, is there anything else we can help with today? And then the user's going to say something, so we need to listen for that answer. This time we'll go ahead and put some buttons in there. Again, with buttons, the user can still just type free flow. This just gives them some additional options. We'll put a button in there for yes. We'll add a button, and we'll put a button in there for no. You can also attach intents to the button. So instead of clicking yes, they actually say yes. That's where you can attach the yes intent. You can do that for no as well, or any other intent or button combination you want to have. Now let's say we test this and we get the message here and it gives us the buttons that we just put in. But let's say now a user puts in one of the intents from this previous step, like tech support or billing. You can see even though that it recognized tech support was the intent of the user, there was no path, there's no intent listed here for tech support to maybe go down this and trigger this tech support process. So that's where before, when I talked about these triggers, these intent triggers, if we get out of this test and we go to add trigger, if you set up a trigger like this, it will listen, I should say, for tech support intent throughout the entire chat. And if it had been up when we went through this test, it would have detected that the user wanted tech support and it would have routed it here. So that's a situation where you might want to use those triggers if you have multiple places where the user can input information and you want to listen for intents in all of those places. Just something to keep in mind. So going back to these buttons, what do we do if a user says or clicks on yes? We can route that to wherever we want. We're going to route it back to, just right back to, what can I help you with today? We'll start that process again. And what about no? If they say no, they don't need anything else, well, in that case, we will want to simply end the chat. You can do that under the action section here and just click end. That will just end the chat. But what if somebody just asks another question like, what is your pricing, or do you have any deals going on? Well, in that case, we would want to route it back to the knowledge base. And so to do that, we'll go ahead under this button section. What if there's no match? That's where we click this little path here. And then we click this little plus button next to path. And now we'll get this pop out for when there's no match to either of these intents. So what do we want to do? We want to send it back to this new block 4. And here, real quick, I'll show you. You can actually title these blocks. And then for the path, you can simply go to that particular block. You draw the arrow. You'll go under actions. There's going to be an option to go to block. You might have seen that. and then you simply select the block. User's question. Now, when they ask another question, it will simply route to this block. We'll send it back to the knowledge base. It'll either answer it if it can, or it'll say, not found. Sorry, I couldn't find the answer. So let's say we wanted to add some functionality where if a user asks 3 questions in a row and they get their answers, we want to do a sort of lead capture step where we ask them if they're interested in scheduling a consultation. How would we do that? Well, first we would go in and we would delete this direct connection from the answer of the user's last utterance to the "is there anything else I can help with" question. We'll delete that connection just by clicking on it and click delete. And we'll want to utilize some of these logic steps over here to set up some variables and also trigger a certain condition if a variable is set. So let's say we wanted to do it where if they ask 3 questions in a row, we want to trigger the lead capture step. We'll go ahead and use this set variable block under logic, and then we'll go to variables to set. We'll want to select the variable from this list. Now, we actually don't have the variable that we want yet. We'll want to create a variable, which you can do by clicking here. Variable name here, we'll just do number of questions. You can enter a description if you like and a default value. The default value is 0, so we'll just keep it at that and click create variable. And then we'll click this to actually set it to something. So every time this block is triggered, what we wanted to set it to is the number of questions plus 1. So it'll basically keep a counter going and we can keep track of the number of questions that way. So each time this block is triggered, it's going to go from 0 to 1, 1 to 2, 2 to 3, and you'll be able to see that when you test, which we'll do in a minute, that the variable is actually changing as we go through the flow. So we'll connect it up here. And now what happens when it actually hits the criteria that we set? What happens when we get to number of questions equals 3? We'll go back to logic. We'll use this if condition. You'll click that, we can drag it right under there. And then we'll put in, we can enter a label if we want. Check number of queues, and then we can actually add the condition. Now, obviously, if you're familiar with programming, this will be pretty straightforward. If not, I think you can figure it out. We are checking if a particular variable, number of questions is, in our case, we're doing 3. That's the criteria. If number of questions is 3, you can add additional conditions if you want to do and or statements, but that's the basic one that we're doing. Now, what do we want to have happen after that? We're going to send it to the lead capture step, which we'll put up here. We'll ask them if they're interested in scheduling a free consultation with one of our representatives. Then we can add some buttons for yes, for no. You get the idea. You can initiate your lead capture here. You can definitely do it where you use the agent to get the information, their name, their email, their phone number, whatever it is, and then populate that in a database on the back end or send an email with that information. I've done it where it just links to the form on my website, whatever you want to do, but we won't get all the way into that. We'll just leave it at this, but that's how you would do that part of the step. And after you set up the if condition to check if the number of questions is 3, if it's not, that's where you'll use this no match again. It's basically the else statement. In that case, we will want to just route straight to, is there anything else I can help you with today? So now we've got that set up. We direct them to the form on our website. If not, we just route them back to the beginning of the conversation here. And keep in mind, you can use something like this for really anything. It could be, signing up for your newsletter, joining the email list, get a free guide, lead magnets, that sort of thing. Anything you want to do, you can pretty much configure it in Voiceflow using something similar to this. So let's test our agent from the beginning. We'll click Start here. We'll ask first what services we have. And you can see here the number of questions variable was updated from 0 to 1. That's how it shows that in the debug mode when you're doing your test. We'll click Yes for Can I Assist? Next, we'll ask about pricing. You can see the knowledge base will give us information about pricing, and then it will adjust the variable count from 1 question to 2. And then we'll try it one more time here. We'll ask about any discounts we're offering. And you can see it answers the question about discounts and special offers, and then it recognizes that the number of questions is now 3. This if statement triggers, and it takes us to this block. So everything seems to be working just about normally. Now, the last thing I wanted to show you guys was how to integrate with make.com and actually create some outside external action based on what happens here within the agent. So that's what we're going to do right now. What I want to do is if, let's say, a user does ask a question that's relevant to the business, but it's not in our knowledge base and we're unable to answer, I actually want to be notified about that, notified of the question, so that I can potentially add it to the knowledge base so that people who ask it in the future will have that information available. So here's what we're going to do. We are going to tab over to make.com. And if you're not familiar with Make, it is essentially a platform for helping to integrate a bunch of different automations with different services, similar to Zapier. We're going to create a new scenario, and we're going to set up something called a webhook, a custom webhook. A webhook is essentially something that listens for some incoming information so that it can then push it on to wherever it needs to go. We'll click on Add a Webhook. The webhook name, we can name it Voiceflow Tutorial Webhook and hit Save. And now you'll see this little icon running that it is listening for the data, and it'll determine the data structure from the incoming data. So what we want to do is copy the address of this webhook to the clipboard. So it's now copied. We'll navigate back over to Voiceflow. And here we want to set up an API step in Voiceflow. So we're going to go ahead and delete this connection here after we say we're unable to find an answer to the question. And we're going to go over to the Dev menu and API, and we'll click and drag that over here. And if you're not familiar with all this, the HTTP methods, GET, POST, and all that, don't worry about it. We'll go into it in more detail in a future video. But basically, when you're posting information, you are submitting information to wherever it's going. If you're getting information, you're trying to retrieve some information. So since we're submitting the question, the user's question, we want to have that sent out, we are going to change this request to a post, and we simply paste in the webhook URL that we had before. Now you can set up a bunch of different information, the headers, the parameters, the body, depending on what your use case needs. In our case, we don't need any of that. There's no authorization required or anything. We just need a body, and it's going to ask for a key and a value in this form data format here. You can also choose these other formats. We're just going to do the key value format. We'll call this user's question, and the value we're going to set to be the last utterance variable, the last thing that the user said that resulted in the model not being able to create a valid answer. So we've got the URL in there, we've got the data in there in the body. We're going to go ahead and hit send request. Before I do that, I want to show you it's still listening for the request. We'll send the request. We'll enter in a value. We'll say the user asked about if there was a deadline, any deadline for our services. Let's just say that. We'll click generate, and we get the response. This 200 response means it was an okay response. Everything should have gone well. We'll navigate back over to make.com, and you can see here now that the format has been successfully determined by that sample request that we sent. So we'll click OK. Now that we've got that webhook set up, we'll want to add a module to it, create a connection. We're going to scroll down. You have a ton of different options here. We are going to use the email function, and we will send an email. And so when you get into this email section, this is where you can connect the email address that you want to send it from. I've just got my business address connected in there. You can do that in the connection. Then you're going to set where you want to send it to. We can just send it to the same email address. You can see here that it recognizes the webhook has some incoming information, the user's question, that is the data that came in. So you could set that, if necessary, as the email address. We're going to go down here to the subject field. We'll put in unknown user question. And for the content here, we'll want to go ahead and put in that user's question. This is where the webhook comes in that format, the key and value. You can simply select the user question and drag it over here and put it into the content. And that's about it for our purposes here. We'll go ahead and click OK. And now we can click on Run Once to get the webhook set up to listen just for this one time. We'll navigate back into Voiceflow. We can actually resend the request because that question was fine. We can simply resend the same request. We'll click Resend. We'll navigate back into Make, and you can see we've got the green check marks, which indicate it did receive something and it did go through to the email successfully. So now we want to check that email address and see if it got the unknown question in the inbox. So we'll navigate to my business email now. And once we've refreshed, we see that we have the user's unknown question. We'll click it, and all we have is just the question that was said. Is there any deadline to use your services? Which is exactly what we put in all the way over on the Voiceflow side. Now we are getting it on the back end to my own business email address to let me know someone had an unknown question. Maybe I want to add this to the knowledge base. Maybe I don't. Obviously, you can customize this in a ton of different ways, but this would be the general idea of how you can connect things in Voiceflow to things on the back end, like a database or a Google spreadsheet or an Excel file or a ton of other things. Just whatever you need done, this would be a simple integration you could do to perform it. Now, we'll want to actually connect these blocks here. And then in the case of success or failure, if it failed for whatever reason, it doesn't really matter. We'll connect both of those up with this new block 6, just asking if there's anything else, and that sort of completes the loop. They can ask another question, they can end the conversation, but that completes everything. So the cycle should work now. And that's just about it for our super basic agent that we have built here. You can do other things to customize it, like changing the color of the different blocks, depending on what you need it for. Obviously, you can switch these around and make it look much more organized, much more pretty, much more streamlined, that sort of thing. But yeah, this is just a base to get you the lay of the land of Voiceflow, sort of how everything interacts, how it flows together, so that you can understand what you can start building. But by all means, iterate on this, improve on it, expand. I will copy this template if you want it into a .vf file and put it in the description, a link to it, and you can download that and then upload this if you didn't want to start from scratch. And once you're done, the only thing left to do is to get this agent onto your website. So to do that, you'll simply navigate back to the main menu of the agent here. You go down to integration here on the left-hand side, navigate to the web chat section, and then you copy this snippet of code and you paste it on your website. You can also customize how the agent's going to show up on your website, where, what it looks like, that sort of thing. You can do that here. But that's it. It's pretty simple. I've done it a few times now, and I haven't had any problems with it. And my friends, thank you so much for watching. That is going to be it for today's tutorial. I hope you got some good information. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, please like and subscribe if you want to stay tuned for any future videos. By all means, if you have questions, if you have comments for how I can improve, if there's any projects you want to see done in the future with this or with other services, please let me know in the comments below. I appreciate you very much for watching. You have a great rest of your day.